You can literally see my dog's ear right here. Can you? There she is. Hi everyone, my name is Holly, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you all of the books that I read for Medieval-A-Thon. First off, I want to thank every single one of you who participated. Thank you so much. I truly hope you all had fun. I hope that this got you into the reading mood. It definitely did for me because I ended up reading 8 books. And a half, I should say. I wasn't able to finish one. I actually got halfway through it, and I also have a DNF that I will be mentioning. But yeah, I'm very proud of myself for reading 8 books. Especially how shitty the world's been lately. It got me to Empress rank with a little extra baggage, so I got like a little peasant friend, and I couldn't be happier. Now the quality of the books, that's a little questionable. So I'm going to start with all of the good books that I read this month, just so we can flip them immediately, get that satisfying flip for you, and I'm going to save all of my very sassy reviews for later, because boy, I actually read more bad books this month than good. So the first book that I read was The Bands of Mourning by Brandon Sanderson. This covered the tall hardcover prompt, which guaranteed me a horse. I got myself a roach. This is the 6th book within the Mistborn series, and it feels like a huge weight has been lifted off my shoulders because I have finally caught up on this series, and I feel like I can sit at the cool kids table now. It was really close to the end of last year when I read my very first Brandon Sanderson book, and look at me now, mom. So I adored Alloy of Law so much, but then I read Shadows of Self, and I was actually really disappointed with that one. I ended up giving it like 2 or 3 stars. But this was amazing. Obviously, I can't talk about the plot all that much because it is the 6th book, but this book is so different compared to books 1 and 2. There's a fair bit of traveling, which means that we get to go outside of the city of Elendil, which is the main city that the characters are in most of book 1 and 2, and it was just really fun. We get to go to the city in the south, and it was so interesting. We also get to go to a couple other locations. The characters are miles and miles away, and they are on an investigation. There's the cinematic action and the snappy dialogue that I loved and missed from Alloy of Law. I feel like Shadows of Self really took a step back, especially when it came to Wayne, but he is back in it with his dialogue in this one, and it made me super happy. This book in general just reveals so much, and the ending is absolutely mind-blowing. I ended up giving this one 4.5 out of 5 stars. One thing that I love about the Mistborn world is how the magic system keeps evolving, and I think that's really cool. And then I read Ravencaller by David Dalglish, and this got me my sword prompt because you had to read something pointy on the cover, and there's obviously 2 swords here. This is the very large sequel to Soulkeeper, which is an adult fantasy book that I read last year, and I absolutely loved it, which is no surprise to me. I knew I would love it. If you're looking for a fantasy that is very action-packed and showcases all kinds of different monsters, and it's set in a world where magic has just recently returned and is causing chaos, and you don't know who the good guys are or who the bad guys are, then be sure to pick up Soulkeeper. The sequel is no different. It really builds on the last book when it comes to the history of the world, and I found that very interesting. I do really want to mention really quickly, and I feel like it's going to make you even more interested, this character right here is inspired by a character from Dark Souls. I literally just sold you the book. So even though it sounds like I absolutely adored this book, I actually ended up giving this 3.5 out of 5 stars, and here's why. There is a romantic pairing for every single main character in this book, and if you've watched my channel for a while, you know I am not a big romance fan, and it just, I don't even have words. And it just made it feel like everyone's motivations were solely based on their love interest. So that unfortunately was a big negative for me. And I do want to quickly mention that there is a chapter in this book, I think it's just called Interlude. It gave me the same feeling that the first 100 pages of Soulkeeper gave me. Give me more of that, David. It gave me this holy crap, things are about to get real moment. It gave me butterflies. I must really like world-changing moments in books, it seems, when a cataclysmic event is happening and the characters are caught in the middle of it. Does that make me a bad person? I just love the feeling that chapter gave me, and it was just one short chapter of it, but I want more of that. Give me more desolation in book 3. So yeah, 3.5 out of 5 stars. I still really enjoyed it. It's like a high-end 3.5, like a Gucci 3.5. It was still great. The next book I'll be talking about is The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. This book fulfilled the Shield prompt, which you had to read a book you had very high expectations for, and boy did I have high expectations for this. Everyone's been raving about it. It has a very high rating on Goodreads, and I was not disappointed. If you are feeling down, feeling depressed, stressed, if you're feeling like a reading slump is coming on, read this book. I loved it so much that I bought a physical copy. This is a whimsical story following a 40-year-old man named Linus, and his job consists of overseeing magical children and their placement within orphanages. He's a caseworker, and he goes to them to make sure that the children are treated well. One day he gets an unexpected task to visit a very strange and secret orphanage. Okay, so this book is literally black and white throughout the beginning, and then you meet the children, the 6 beautiful children, and this book just like bursts into color all of a sudden. I adore each and every single children in this orphanage. It literally makes my heart melt. I also want to mention that this is a queer love story, and though I don't like romance, this love story just blossoms beautifully, and it's definitely a pairing I can get behind forever and ever. And that's a lot coming from me. There is an underlying mystery that just makes you want to turn the page and figure out what is happening, and this book does have its dark times, and it brings up some really important questionable circumstances that relate to our real world, which is a good thing. I ended up giving this 5 out of 5 stars. I loved this book so much, and it's a book that I see myself reading time and time again. I love this so much, I kind of want to put it on my favorite shelf, like these 2 shelves. Probably in this corner. Yeah. So, unfortunately, those are the only 3 books that I'm turning around this month. I thought for sure I was going to turn around more, but nope, the rest of the books I have here were kind of disappointing. Or very disappointing, I should say. Like this next book is going to be a very unpopular opinion, but I ended up reading the comedy The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. Wow, this was freaking hilarious. I am totally convinced it's a comedy. It was so freaking funny. And I read this for the chicken prompt, which you had to read a book that was scary. And I kind of feel like I'm cheating. This is a cult classic horror book that I guess defines the horror genre in some way, and maybe back then it was scary, but I guess it doesn't age well because this was freaking comedy jam. Even the opening conversation is like listening to an argument between toddlers. The characters are literally huddling together and cracking jokes while there's a ghost at their bedroom door. It reminded me of Scary Movie 2, and now I know where the directors of that movie got their inspiration. Right here. Will I even like a freaking classic at this point? Like, seriously, it's impossible for me. I ended up giving this a very generous 2 out of 5 stars. The reason why I'm not giving it a 1 star is because I enjoyed laughing with the characters. It was a freaking blast. The next book that I read was The Dark Tide by Alicia Jasinska, and I read this for the bow and arrow prompt. You had to read a romance. This is a dark, and I'm using that word very loosely, YA fantasy that I think I went into with too high of expectations than I should have. The beginning of the book actually started out pretty good. I enjoyed the introduction. It's set on this island where every year, I think, they have to sacrifice a boy to the Witch Queen so that the island doesn't flood. And it's a lesbian novel as well, which I was so excited for. But as soon as the Witch Queen, who I was very excited to meet, was introduced, I was over it. Because I was really disappointed in her character. Actually, all of the witches I was very disappointed in. And yes, there is more than one, which I feel like made the Witch Queen not special at all. The witches, including the Witch Queen, just act like normal teenage characters, and it's not what I wanted. Nothing made her queenly or dark in my opinion. They're just a bunch of horny teenagers basically, because they have to fall in love with the boy that they sacrifice. Ugh, it just makes me so disappointed because this had so much potential. Imagine the Witch Queen alone in this dark castle, which there is a castle in this book, but instead she's with a bunch of other witches who are just a bunch of teenagers with a lot of problems. And the amount of plot holes and inconsistencies this book has, wow. The characters' motivations flip-flop on a freaking dime. They will feel an extreme emotion one way, and then a couple chapters later, they will feel the extreme emotion the opposite way. It is very frustrating. I ended up giving this one 1 out of 5 stars. I do rate based on my enjoyment, so this still might be for you. I believe it comes out in August. I think it was pushed back. The next book that I read, and I can't believe I'm doing a negative review for this book because, yeah, anyways, The Perfect Assassin by K.A. Dorr. This book got me the pet goat. You had to read a book that was high on your bookshelf, and this book I have up here, so it counted. I'm so saddened by this one. I thought this was going to be either a 4 or 5 star read, but it wasn't. Everything from the world and the characters just felt so base level to me. There was no depth to anything. The one thing I did find so freaking cool was the city that this book takes place in. The city is in the middle of the desert. It's suspended on platforms high above the sands. The story follows a young boy who is being trained to be an assassin, and one day he stumbles upon a body of a clan leader who has been murdered. And in this world, when you die, if your spirit is not tamed immediately, it will be released into the world and just cause chaos. Even that part of the story was so freaking cool, but the execution of it was just lackluster. And I feel so guilty giving this a low rating because I want it to be good, but I just found myself so bored, and if it wasn't for Medieval-A-Thon, I probably would have DNF'd it, and I wanted that goat. I gave this 2 out of 5 stars, and I do own book 2, and apparently you can read them as standalones. So I definitely want to give book 2 a chance. The next book that I read was Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman, and this got me the outfit where you had to read a book under 300 pages. Okay, first off, this book was not bad at all before you come for me. This book is just a collection of short stories written by Neil Gaiman about Norse mythology. So just your normal Norse mythology stories, which I know all about. I'm very familiar with them, but I just didn't find anything special about them in this form. This is my first Neil Gaiman book, and I know he's much more famous for his other books, and I'm sure they are far better because he's just retelling stories that have been told a billion times. But we're talking about this one, and this is a very short review. I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars. There's really not much to say about it. I just didn't find anything like mind-blowing or anything. Your normal generic Norse mythology. You can look them up online if you want. I am not comfortable. I need to turn this camera. And the final book that I read completely for the month of May for Medieval-A-Thon was Dragon Slayer by Duncan M. Hamilton, which got me the outfit where you had to read a book with a dragon on the cover. Another book that I thought I was going to love. Yet again, I keep setting myself up for failure at this point. I really learned a lesson this month. I need to stop going into books with high expectations. You'll be disappointed every time. So this is following an ex-captain of the guard named Gullet, and he lives alone in this cottage, and he's pretty much just drinking his life away when one day he is tasked to kill this dragon that has recently resurfaced. There's definitely more underlining plot lines that involve treachery, and some side characters have their own mission, but that's kind of like the gist of it. And unfortunately, there just isn't anything memorable about this book besides the cover. It's just your simple dragon slaying story, which there's nothing wrong with if the execution is made to be at least somewhat thrilling, but that's just not the case here. The narration has a very old school feel to it, which I thought was going to be such a great change of pace compared to a lot of convoluted fantasies that are out in the world these days, but I wanted more. It literally has all of the ingredients to be a amazing fantasy. It's set in medieval times. There's knights, mages, dragons, but I found myself bored. I went 3 whole days without reading this book, and thankfully the audiobook got me through to the end, or else I probably would have DNF'd it. It makes me so sad because it actually starts off pretty well, and I have a soft spot for the main character. Like, this is a book where I feel like maybe I want to give it another chance. I don't know. I want to like it so much, but it just wasn't enough. Okay, so those were all the books I completed for Medieval-A-Thon, and now onto the book that I am halfway through that I unfortunately wasn't able to finish, and that was The Emperor's Blades. And this would have given me that pretty pink dress because you had to read a book that has yellowed over time, but I didn't get it. This is actually taking me forever to read, and it's because I'm not picking it up. I'm enjoying it, but I'm also not enjoying it. I'm so caught in the middle, but yeah, I'm having such a hard time getting through this one. It's so hard to explain. Like, I like it, But, like, there's obviously a reason why I'm not picking it up. This is how far I am. I'm literally, like, halfway. Hopefully I can finish this in June and I'll be wrapping up in my next wrap-up. Okay, now we're on to the DNF, and I tried reading Apocalypse Yesterday by Brock Adams. This releases in October, and it's a zombie book. It's a bit on the comedy side, I guess. And the only thing good about it is its cover. So like I said, it's a zombie book, but it takes place after the zombie apocalypse has already happened and people are living their normal lives. It does go back in the past in some chapters, which were the best chapters, I guess, but it was basically a contemporary novel. A very boring one. So yeah, DNF graveyard it goes. Okay, so those were all of the books I read and tried to read for Medieval-A-Thon. Thank you so much to everyone who participated this round. Maybe there will be another round before the year ends. I don't know, we'll see. I absolutely loved seeing all of your videos and blogs and Instagram pictures and on Twitter as well. Everyone who is in the Discord, thank you so much for being active. All of your drawings and all the stories that you guys created. Thank you so much for making it so fun. So go ahead and give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed. It helps me out so much. Go ahead and subscribe. I upload videos every single week. Follow me on Instagram at HollyHeartsBooks and on Twitter at HollyNiece. And until we meet again, happy reading.